Hello, and welcome to the Ponderings of Pete. I'm here with Uri Gutman. We will be talking about objectivity and subjectivity, a topic that's been going around BookTube for a bit. Starting off with Mr. Michael Knipp's video, which I'll put things down below. There'll be things. Michael Knipp put out a video a while back called I'm Biased, continued by Christy, who responded to that, me, who responded to that with my own thing. There was also Tension. And then Bookborn recently put out 2 videos talking about objectivity and subjectivity in relation to art and books. So, yeah, we're going to dive into this because Uri here has some thoughts. And
I find it fascinating. You might even say I'm passionate.
I think that's a common consensus among us. I think you can look at it in videos and see a lot of things. So what do you think of objectivity and subjectivity? Do you think they exist? They're the same? They're not the same?
I think they exist, and the most healthy way for them to exist is separately, like as separate discussions. An objective review, like when we discuss something from an objective point of view, it's one conversation, and when we discuss it from subjective point of views, it's a totally different discussion. And both of them are really important. Both of them are really useful. And I am convinced that both of them exist, that both of them are possible. I sometimes see people say that one is not possible or not relevant. Sometimes, like, in debates that escalate into arguments and fights, you can see one person say like, there is no such thing as an objective review, and then the guy who tries to be objective takes it personally. Or the other way around, one can say, well, that's just your opinion, it doesn't really matter. And then the person who makes the subjective review takes it personally. So there is some of that also. And I gotta say that I really appreciate how it wasn't anything like that in the debate that I saw on BookTube. All the people that you mentioned, Michael Knipp and Lindsay and you and Bookborn, it was all very respecting, and it was so refreshing to see. Like, I remember one time when I mentioned that I think there is such a thing as an objective review to a friend. He basically unfriended me, like, in real life. In that, no, I'm kidding. But he said some very harmful words, and we left it at that. So that's my intro. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the things I like about BookTube as well, is that we all realize that we all have a lot of opinions, and some of us definitely have some very strong opinions. Whether it's people hating on Aragon or people thinking that Lord of the Rings is ironic, is the god of fantasy type of deal. It's we all have a lot of opinions, and we all understand and respect. I mean, the fact that we can have Klaus, the contradictorian himself, exist, and we all love and respect him, even though a lot of us disagree with a lot of his takes.
So yeah, I would really like to begin with, like, setting up my approach to this whole subject. Like, I watched the videos. I really like them, all of them. Some of them I even rewatched, and I had thoughts, and I have, like, my own terminology that really helps me cope with this subject wherever I meet it. And I would like to, like, offer it and see what you think about it, and see what the listeners think about it, and stuff like that. So starting off, I would like to talk about the words good and bad. And I'm going to ask you, when you say that something about a book is really good, let's say an action scene, what do you mean by when you say that?
Most of the time when I think of, like, okay, this action scene was good, it usually is, for me, it's that either it was emotionally evocative, or that it was very well described, essentially. So, like, there's a difference when you're looking at, like, a battle, and I would contrast. Some of the books I've read recently have been less military focused, but they have military elements in them. So a lot of their descriptions are more, hey, this is what's happening in the battle, and this cavalry contingent went and blew over this cavalry contingent, and they're driving them back now. And it's very brief versus something in a Malazan book. Specifically, I would say some of his battle scenes are very, you sense the ebb and flow of the battle, and whatever the outcome is, you see through his descriptions, whether it's certain points of view, he will show you the ebb and flow of the battle. There's some interesting, and sometimes even with the campaign, Reaper's Gale was really good about being an interesting way to describe how a campaign progressed over the entire period of time.
All right. So that's an excellent way to express your subjective review of like that action scene and of like saying if it's good or not. And when someone tries to be objective, I've never tried to be objective about a battle scene, but I can imagine someone would say something like, he will try to define an objectively good battle scene is a battle scene that looks like the good guys are going to lose, and then they win. And then they will say that this is what makes an action scene like objectively good. And then they will make the judgment of whether or not that action scene was good or not. Those are, now my point about this is not to say that either one is right in any way. I want to say that both of those reviews are really good at what they are trying to do, but they use the same word for different meanings. Both of you will say the battle scene was good, but the person who tries to be objective will mean one thing, and you will mean something entirely different. And for that reason, I would like to just take the words good and bad and put them aside and just like try to be more descriptive of the thing itself. So I would say that the objective reviewer would be better off if they didn't use the words good or bad and just say this battle scene made it seem like the hero is going to lose, and then the hero won. And the description of the scene will be everything that you just said, that it was emotionally provocative and all of the other stuff. So like as a beginning of this conversation, I would just like to say that I don't think the words good and bad and better or worse are very useful in this discussion. Like when people try to argue whether or not something should be objective or subjective and stuff, the words good and bad just share too many meanings, and it's better to just not use them. Use other words.
So that would be because they're mainly subjective, very subjective words, and
exactly.
Really dependent on the person.
Exactly. I totally agree. I totally agree. And it's just that those couple of words are just they are too loaded with meanings, and it's impossible to make a useful debate with them.
So going back to what Christy was saying specifically about getting rid of those words. So Christy was saying that Rothfuss versus Sanderson. Rothfuss is objectively better or objectively good at his prose. Would you say that's not an objective statement then, or what?
I would say that this statement will be better off if she didn't use the words better or worse, or just settle for describing how are they different. So she can still say totally objectively, and I will soon explain how I define something objective, but I'd say she can say totally objectively that Brandon Sanderson's prose is different than Patrick Rothfuss. And she can give examples like I haven't read Name of the Wind. Don't hold it against me. Did you read it?
Yes, I've actually read it several times.
Okay, good. So you can help me out here. I would assume that Brandon Sanderson uses less descriptions and more dialogue tags, like he said, she said. And I would even say that Sanderson dialogue tags are probably more repetitive. Like he usually uses the words said and noted instead of like bringing a variety of those into the page. And I imagine that Patrick Rothfuss uses a bigger variety and more descriptions. Like just more the page is a description of the scene. So she can say from a very objective point of view that this prose is different than this in those elements, and saying that one is better or worse is just it's going to mean different things to different people. So I wouldn't do that.
I think it's almost important to point that out for prose, just because I feel like prose is such a difficult thing to describe. Sometimes I feel like I don't really have a grasp on what prose means to a certain extent.
I know, right? It really
what do you mean by prose? Why don't you just say they're writing? That was kind of my initial reaction sometimes with prose, and something I want to define more to myself over time. But it's a very, I think ephemeral is the right word. Like it's
ephemeral. Yeah, I guess like
hard
it's
to grasp.
Yeah, like a spiritual thing, like something that's really difficult to, hard to grasp.
I don't know about you, but I don't be worshiping my books. Anyways, despite the looks of this being an altar, right?
Yeah, of course. So that's what my thought on that. I really liked Lindsay's video. The only thing that I didn't relate to is the use of the words better or worse, because I really find them misleading. Like when she says better, maybe it will mean worse for me, and that really takes it to a subjective place. But if she would just say that this prose is like that and this prose is like that, and it opens up a spectrum, and any book or any page can fall anywhere between those two authors who kind of take the opposite sides of the spectrum, I think it would be an objective claim, and I would like to explain what I mean when I say something objective, and that's more related to your video. So you will need to correct me if I got it wrong. I just rewatched it before we started. I wanted to get my mindset right, but I still may be wrong. Maybe I didn't understand you. I think you said that an objective review needs to reflect facts, and facts are a matter of consensus. And you gave the example of the sky is blue. That this is like a fact, and if I would say that the sky is blue, then it would be objective, I guess.
Not necessarily. I think the way I tried to phrase it was that objective and subjective exist on a spectrum of judgment. So if there's a difference between having a factual statement and an objective statement, a fact would be the sky is blue. Something along the lines of the sky is pretty would be a judgmental statement, which could be labeled objective or subjective. It was late when I filmed that video. I feel like there's better with that thing.
Okay, so I have several ways to define what an objective review is, and it's related, but it's like its own terminology. And I feel that many people bring their own terminology into that conversation, and I'm going to do it too. And that terminology, of course, is not like in any way universal or something, and people can take it and do with it whatever they want. So first off, there is this kind of myth that objective review has to be accepted by everyone. I can't say that's true. I don't know that there is anything that is accepted by everyone in existence. Like, I don't think you can get a consensus that the sun is a star even. I'm sure you can find someone that will argue. No, it's not. Of course, it's a planet.
The world is round.
Yeah, exactly. You can't get a consensus on that, so you can definitely not get a consensus about like storytelling stuff that are not based on science or anything. So I wouldn't say that an objective review needs to be accepted by everyone, and that kind of tackles that consensus thing. I would even dare say that an objective review only needs to be accepted by the people who are sharing a debate. Like if me and you will try to be objective right now, we are the only people that need to be in agreement. Other than that, and we can make objective reviews through that. So that's one. Secondly, objective review doesn't even have to reflect facts in my terminology. If I make the statement that Mistborn is a 100 pages, I don't know, science fiction, that's still an objective review. Now, it may be false, but it's still objective. I didn't express my experiences in any way. I just described how long the book is and what genre it is. And I may be wrong, but I was objective about it. So there is that. In an extension to that, I have to say also that an objective review is refutable. Like you can prove it's wrong or true, false or true. And that means that's a big difference from subjective reviews, because subjective reviews are not refutable in any way. I can't. That's many times in the soul of the argument when people like start throwing stuff at each other.
That's just how you feel.
Yeah. No one can take away from you how you feel, and I'm going to give an example to that, and I'm going to use that example a lot. In Mistborn, one of the main protagonists, Kelsier, is a blonde, and like 50% of the people, I'm just throwing numbers right now, but I think about 50% of the people don't imagine him as blonde. It just somehow people miss it. I know that my very good friend Thea didn't imagine him as blonde, and then she saw the fan art and she was like, "Who is that?" And I didn't imagine him as blonde either, and I'm still having trouble like imagining it right now. But he is in the book. He is described as blonde. How was it for you? Did you?
I didn't know he was blonde actually.
Up until now.
This is a new revelation. I'm like, oh, he's blonde. That's interesting. That means me and Kelsier share hair color. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, you just need to smile and like make a rebellion and stuff, and then Kelsier is a blonde, and that can be if someone imagined him as black-haired or ginger through the entire book. I can't prove that they are wrong. It's irrefutable. That's a subjective review. That's their experience with the book, and that's totally irrefutable. There is nothing to talk about. No, there is stuff to talk about always, but I can't prove it's wrong.
But I feel like you can, though.
No, I can't prove that objectively they're wrong. I can't prove that their subjective experience was wrong. It was their subjective experience, and if that's what they imagine, if that's what went through their head, then that's what went through their head, and nothing I can bring to the table can fix that or change that. An objective review can be refuted, and I think that makes it really fun to debate then, because when I make the claim that Kelsier is a blonde, we can now bring the book and look for descriptions. And if it says that he is a ginger, then I was wrong. And if it says that he's a blonde, then I was right. So in this way, objective review is refutable, and subjective review is not. And the last thing that I will use to define what an objective review is that it doesn't reflect my experience in any way. Like I've just given like a 5 minutes monologue about how Kelsier is blonde, and it doesn't reflect my experience at all, because from my experience, he wasn't. He really wasn't. I think I imagined him as black-haired. So
ashy haired.
So yeah, that's my definition to what an objective review is. It doesn't reflect my experience with the story in any way. It doesn't. It is refutable, and it doesn't have to be accepted by everyone. If someone else says that Kelsier has black hair and they have the data to prove it, then okay. And even if they don't have the data to prove it, if they felt that Kelsier wasn't blonde, there's a subjective review. They don't have to agree with me. Or if for some reason, I don't know, maybe they're Australian or something, in their language blonde means black hair, also they will not be in consensus with me, and that's fine. My review is that says that Kelsier is blonde is still objective. Now that's about like something that's really simple, like the description of a character. It gets a little bit more complicated with like storytelling stuff like plot holes and Deus Ex Machina and prose and stuff like that. And in all of those things that I would really love to talk about with you. I'll try not to use the words good or bad. But they are things, they are parts of the storytelling, just like whether or not Kelsier is blonde. And I think they can be discussed from an objective lens or from a subjective lens, and those are separate conversations, but both of them can be done.
So would you separate the distinction of good and bad from good and evil?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
At least in some cases. That's really interesting. Now I kind of want to put it in a book.
Because actually, my next question to kind of like see how you would approach a situation. So if I say Kelsier is not a good character, and I don't mean in good or bad character, I mean on a good and evil scale of things. So if I say Kelsier is not really a good character in terms of morally good, how would you approach that with your definitions of objectivity and subjectivity?
That's really great that you asked that, because I just realized I totally forgot like one of the most important parts of what an objective review is. In an objective review, we set up criteria, and then we see if the data matches the criteria. So now you asked me that question, and we will need to set up the criteria of what is a morally good character. So would you say that a character like that is, I don't know, not violent? I guess we can begin there.
So when I talk about morally good or morally bad, I think I would mainly go into, or morally evil, and that spectrum of what it is. I would say that a morally good character would be doing things for the right reasons. A lot of it goes down to not only the actions they take, but sometimes you have to determine whether they're good or not based on the motivations behind the actions. Because sometimes there are, in the human experience, there are bad things that are required to be done by good people. And I would argue, so I think from this point on, we're just going to do Mistborn Final Empire spoilers.
All right.
So if you haven't read Mistborn Final Empire, I will have in the description below, there will be timestamps, and you can come back afterwards. So
go read it. It's an amazing book. Objective.
It is, yes. Just go read it and come back to this video and watch this. It's a really good book. So the concept of so let's take a look at some of his actions. First of all, he kills a lot of nobles. Murder is technically a bad thing.
Yes. Yes,
but so does Vin. And I think we could probably use her as she's a good person most of the time. Or even Elend. Elend still kills people, and he's a good dude. Loki's sort of my spirit animal in some ways, but that's another thing. So I would say that Kelsier is doing bad things when he's killing nobles, not because of the evilness of the nobles. We're not going to debate that. But because he's doing it and he's definitely taking a lot of pleasure in it. Whether it's because of the revenge that he's taking from the death of his wife, or just he really likes killing, which I think is actually more of the case.
I tend to agree. And like, even if I didn't, I would have agreed for the sake of conversation, but I tend to agree overall. Like, it's really difficult without spoilers. Read Mistborn, people, if you haven't, please. Yeah, I really like this take on Kelsier, that he's not morally good. And I will leave it at that, to not go into more spoiler territory, to more Mistborn-related stuff. And once we've set up this agreement on what is a morally good character, we differed from characters that kill because they have to characters that kill because they like to. And or it doesn't have to be because. It's like, if a character kills and they don't enjoy it, then it can't be held against them. And if a character kills and they do enjoy it, then it can be held to say that they are not morally good. I guess that would pretty much sum it up as criteria. And Kelsier falls into the second one, that he kills and enjoys killing. And that makes him now sort of objectively morally not good in the setup of this discussion. Like, we set up the criteria, we managed to show how the data shows that that the criteria is satisfied, and that leads to saying that with nothing to do with our experience of Kelsier, he is an objectively not good character. Now, the criteria itself is somewhat subjective. That's the whole here, because this is like our opinion of what makes a morally good character, but it doesn't have to be. We could have also devised an entirely different criteria that doesn't represent our opinion. Like, say that a morally not good character is someone like the Lord Ruler, who's like who would let rape and murder be a part of the routine in his kingdom. And I don't think Kelsier would have done that. And if we set up this criteria, which is totally different and not necessarily our opinion, then Kelsier doesn't match that criteria, and from this point, he's not a morally bad character. And the thing about this is that none of those have to reflect our opinion. None of those have to reflect our experience. It does reflect a opinion, but it isn't our opinion, and in that way I would say that it's not like so subjective. It more falls under the objective kind of thing, because it doesn't reflect our experience and not our opinions. It just reflects one thing, some criteria that we decided about for the sake of conversation.
So when you say about, I'm seeing some, I feel like I'm seeing some conflicting things here. When you say that the objective statement of, hey, Kelsier is morally bad, is a opinion, how does that interact with objectivity has to be refutable?
It can be refutable if you find data that show that he isn't. If you find, go to the book and look up parts where Kelsier kills people, and find a line saying, crap, I just killed this person. I totally did not enjoy this. It's horrible, and his blood on my hands is going to stain me forever, and I feel terrible about it. and oh my God, his children are going to be orphans and stuff like that, all the regret and stuff, and he's not enjoying it at all. Then this is data that proves that that claim that Kelsier is not morally good does not match the criteria we set, and in that way, it's false.
Okay.
So yeah, that's about it. It does get a little bit tricky though. There is also another part where it gets a little bit tricky, and yeah, I don't have all the answers. My terminology is not flawless, but it does provide like a safe space to talk about those stuff. At least in my experience. Another part that can be a bit problematic about it is how an objective part of the book can totally affect our subjective experience of it. Like if there is an objective plot hole in the story, it can affect our subjective experience with the story, and that can lead to a lot of confusion because some people will say that they did not notice that plot hole, so it does not exist for them. And then people will say, but wait, but it does exist, and things get confused. So those are the two like Achilles heels in what I bring to the table. One of them is how an objective statement can affect subjective review. Also, the other way around. If I'm very sensitive to plot holes, then I'm more likely to notice them than another person. So they can affect each other. And what we just said about how our criteria is basically just our opinion of that criteria, or it represents a opinion. Doesn't have to be our opinion, but yeah.
Would you say that if you break down objective arguments, for instance, in this case of Kelsier being not a morally good character, would you say that if you eventually break it down, you're going to get to some subjective opinions that are affecting the objective? In this case, it would be the perception of killing people and taking pleasure in it is morally bad.
I think it's possible, but then we can set up different objective criteria, and we will just like need to reach consensus for the sake of the conversation. Without such consensus, there can't be an objective discussion about the book. But once we can come to an agreement about what makes a morally not good character, I just don't like the word bad, but I should use it more. Once we reach an agreement about what makes a morally bad character, then we can discuss it from an objective lens. That's what I'm saying.
So objectivity is formed by consensus between the people that
who participate. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's actually a very interesting and very good definition, I think.
Thank you. It is my approach to it, and it helped me like save myself from a lot of mostly Star Wars fights online.
How so?
Yeah. All those discussions about Mary Sue's and plot holes and stuff like that. They can go to all kinds of places. Mary Sue is actually a very good example that I really wanted to discuss today also. It doesn't have to be Star Wars related if you can think about another one. But many people define Mary Sue differently. And I see a lot of people like saying, in my opinion, she is Mary Sue. In my opinion, she's not Mary Sue and stuff like that. And the thing is that once in a discussion, people reach a consensus about what a Mary Sue is, then they should be able to objectively say whether this character is a Mary Sue or not. They shouldn't be able to say if that character being a Mary Sue is good or not, because that's going to translate to different things for different people. And what's interesting about this is that I am actually very much at fault here. I love Mary Sue characters. I really enjoy them on screen, in a book, everywhere. I don't think I ran into a lot of them in a book, but like, if someone came to me and proved, and we would reach a consensus that Vin is a Mary Sue, I would still very much enjoy her in the book. And that doesn't take away from my ability to say, from an objective point, what makes Mary Sue and why some writers should avoid writing that. Most likely, Mary Sue is a perfect character. And if she's perfect, then she doesn't have anything to learn. And without anything to learn, it just yanks the learning element out of the book. Like if the writer wants to write about a learning journey, then writing about a character that can't learn anything because she already knows everything is probably not a good idea. But I can say that regardless of how much I enjoy her, and in that way, those are very separate conversations. I can like say how when I watched Captain Marvel in the cinema, I was like, oh my god, really hyped. But still, I can still say that from an objective point of view, she's too perfect. She solves her conflicts too easily. And I can point out to why that makes a poor choice for a narrative that tries to show us how she learns to cope with her limitations. So two totally separate conversations, very different claims, and I would say even opposite. Like subjective review is irrefutable. No one can take away from me how much I enjoy Mary Sue's. But an objective review is refutable, and all of the other stuff. It's just like you take the definition of what makes a subjective review, and you give it a symbol that says "not this," and that's what makes it objective.
Okay. So would you call, so specifically in the case, because I'm interested in this answer myself, because I was not a fan of either of these characters that much. Would you call Ray and Captain Marvel both Mary Sue's?
Yes, maybe under different definitions. I think the definition that matches Ray is more the Wikipedia definition, which is a character that excels in everything she does and wins all of her battles. Anytime she tries to do something, she succeeds, and you don't see her training and stuff like that. You definitely don't see her try and fail. That's like way off. You can see a lot of discussion about that, trying to say that Luke is also a Mary Sue, and then all you need to do is go to Empire Strikes Back and show that he lost the fight. He lost the fight. So once you define a character that is a Mary Sue as someone who never fails, then Luke is not a good example, and Rey is. You see how she's better than Han in fixing his own spaceship without ever being on one. She's an amazing pilot, and we never get an explanation for that. Like with Luke and Anakin, at least we got the explanation that it's somehow in their genes. And with Rey, it's not even that. And what else? She beats Kylo Ren both in Force using when he tries to read her mind, and in a battle with lightsabers, even though he's much more trained. And we don't see her manage to save Han, but the movie tries really hard to not give her the opportunity. It's like it tries not to show her fail. So, if we agree that the definition of a Mary Sue is a character that never fails in anything she does, then yes, we see everything that Rey does, and we can determine that she fits this criteria. So, objectively, she is a Mary Sue in this discussion. However, first off, it is refutable. There is one scene where Kylo Ren overpowers her in the forest. Like he finds her, he does a thing to her head, and she faints, and he holds her, and then he takes her away. So this is a piece of data that can be used against the claim that she always succeeds, and that will give rise to a conversation, to a discussion, to a debate, whether or not she is a Mary Sue, whether or not this suffices to prove that she's not, and stuff like that. So that's one. And secondly, we can approach it with an entirely different definition that would fit more Captain Marvel, and that is a character that is super powerful. I don't know. That can also pass, I guess, as definition of a Mary Sue. And in that case, Rey is not that super powerful. We don't see her like approach the Star Killer base and just go like this, and then it explodes. That didn't happen. Captain Marvel would.
Yeah, I think in later movies, Rey approached that pretty easily. I mean, after specifically, I think at the beginning of 9 is when kind of that was like, oh my gosh, she's super powerful now. Started for her.
Yeah. But at least there you see her train a little bit. At least we got that.
I mean
there was a montage.
There was a montage, so she had to have trained a lot.
Yeah. So back to books. We can see some Mary Sues. I'm sure there is someone out there that makes a claim that Vin is a Mary Sue. And then and then we can approach a discussion with that person and say that subjectively they were frustrated by her being a Mary Sue. We were not, and that's pretty much the end of the discussion. They can't refute our position, and we can't refute theirs. Once we try to set up a consensus about the definition what a Mary Sue is, then the conversation becomes objective. It's suddenly separate from each of our experience with that story. And if they say that I can't even, my heart melts. I can't say that Vin is a Mary Sue. I wouldn't.
I would honestly.
If we reach a consensus that the definition of a Mary Sue is a character that controls all the medals and can wipe out armies and like a chosen one and can defeat a god and stuff like that, then the data kind of reflect her as a Mary Sue. But on the other hand, you do see her fail, you do see her train. So if the definition of a Mary Sue also involves that a Mary Sue isn't shown training and isn't shown failing, then Vin is not a Mary Sue. So it all comes down to what is the definition that we present, and that definition again doesn't have to reflect our opinion. It can reflect someone else's opinion, like Brandon Sanderson's opinion of what Mary Sue is, for example.
Brandon Sanderson defines Brandon as a Mary Sue. Hot take.
Yeah. Like find what he said about a Mary Sue in some discussion, in some Q&A, and then like this is the definition, and Vin matches. Yeah. There is a
question.
There is an interesting thing about that, actually. I think that Brandon sees that as a flaw in the story, like in his own perspective. That doesn't suffice me to say it's objective, by the way, because it's his perspective, but it can match a lot of other perspectives as well. Mm-hmm. In the end of Mistborn, you see Vin inhale the mists, and this is explained only later on in the series. And this is how she defeats the Lord Ruler. And Sanderson, I saw in some interviews, say that it was not properly foreshadowed, and that makes it a Deus Ex Machina. And he considers it a flaw in the story. And if we agree with his definition about what a Deus Ex Machina is, then yeah, that part is Deus Ex Machina, and it's too bad, and Mistborn is not perfect.
What? Mistborn isn't perfect. I can hear standard fans screaming at you right now.
Yeah. I really like that part. I don't mind a little bit of Deus Ex Machina for the sake of, of spectacle.
I can agree.
But
loved
but it can still be objectively Deus Ex Machina if we set up the criteria of what it is and we show from the data from the book that this matches it. Then yeah, we've been at it for quite a while.
Deus Ex Machina?
When the author like gives a character a way to solve a problem. Without at the moment that the character needs it or very close to it, like chronologically, and it wasn't like foreshadowed before in any way. If it was foreshadowed before at least a little bit, then I don't think I would call it a Deus Ex Machina. I would say that it's a poorly foreshadowed solution or something like that. But if it wasn't foreshadowed at all, then I would say Deus Ex Machina. I want to take it to one more point that I think it is really important. That's also how you finished your video, and that's what booktubers should be doing. Of course, I'm definitely not going to tell other people what they should do. That's not where this is going. But it does reflect a little argument, a little disagreement that I had with Bookborn about whether or not this is interesting, whether or not an objective review is interesting or not. Because many people come to the Booktube channel or the reviewer channel to see what this person thought about the book. And they don't necessarily come to see if Kelsier is blonde or not and stuff like that. And I would say that some people do want to know. They want to know, like from what we said about Mistborn, if a book contains Deus Ex Machina. And if yes, then it may affect their experience of the book differently than ours. And they may not want to pick up the book because it has that part. So I do think that's an important thing to take, or it can be the other way around. Like we made it very clear here that even though Mistborn has a tiny moment of Deus Ex Machina, that, at least according to the author's definition of it, we still very much like the book, and I would recommend it to basically anyone. So that's also something that someone may want to know when they approach the book. So I wouldn't say that an objective review is not interesting. I would say that some people, if that objective element is a part of how they experience the book, the objective element being Deus Ex Machina and their experience is whether or not they like it. If it's relevant, then they would like to hear it, and if it's not, then no. I very much like objective reviews, especially now with the new wave of MCU content. I really like how people dissect the way that things affect the past of the MCU and stuff. Have you seen any of the new stuff?
I have seen the TV shows. I haven't seen Black Widow yet, even though that's something I really want to do in the next week or so, or next weekend.
Okay,
sort of.
cool. So mild low-key spoilers. It introduces some kind of time police that like made sure that the timeline went the way it should be, and it would be an objective discussion to try to understand how this affects the world building of the rest of the multiverse, how it affects like free will of other characters and stuff, because that has nothing to do with our experience with the story. If I would say that in my experience in Loki, I did not think about it, it didn't bother me at all, that is my subjective review about it. But we can, like under the stuff that we talked throughout this video, we can talk about how this objectively affects the world building, I would say.
Yeah, I'm not... I think I liked the show Loki, but I think there were a lot of... I don't think it was a good standalone show. And there were a lot of... their time travel / dimensional travel theories were holy in not in the religious sense, but the add the e in. There were holes in them that felt like it didn't make sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I just like for in the frame of this video, I would say that any discussion can set up criteria to what makes a whole, and then find data in the show that show that it is a whole. And then someone else can, I don't know, some extra expert in quantum physics can come with their own data and try to prove that it's false. And that would be like a part of the discussion, and that's really fine. And it's an entirely separate conversation from whether or not people felt those holes as they watched the show. Like in Endgame, I think people also find such holes in the time travel stuff. And I did not feel them in my, I don't know, first 50 watch throughs. I'm a fan. I did not feel any of them, but people who gave it quite a lot of thought, with a lot of criteria and a lot of research, did find them. So that's just two very different conversations, and I would say that both are important, both are interesting.
Absolutely.
And there is no reason to cancel each other. I would say that I don't want to cancel people who say that there are holes in Loki and Endgame's time travel stuff, and I wouldn't want them to cancel my enjoyment of Endgame or my disenjoyment of Loki. So yeah.
Yes, I think the cancellation of people due to their opinions is sometimes overblown a little bit.
Yes, I think that's the biggest problem with that discussion. Like I see it somewhere. I already praised it, but I want to praise it again. It's amazing that it didn't happen here on BookTube. That everyone still respect each other. It's so awesome because like I hear about Twitter fights that can escalate to really dark places. There are some people who say that stuff like you're watching movies wrong and stuff like that, and it's like what? So.
And then there's Alan. So it's interesting. There was a World Hoppers video that you should go watch. This is very interesting because it's literally titled "Let's Argue." I'm going to link that down in the description, of course.
It's new, right? Alan, I got a notification for it like yesterday or something. I think
it's amazing. Just
all right. I shall.
Alan is like Alan has such a good heart. I know he does. After talking with him about a lot of things, and most of this time, it's just like he's like this is part of his sense of humor, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I will definitely go watch it. I would like to say something mild spoilers for Mistborn 2. Because you reminded me of Alan, and I think that's another great example of what we talked about in the last hour. Zane.
Zane.
Yes, Zane in Mistborn 2. Did you see how Alan rants about Zane? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I have seen Alan rant about Zane.
Okay, so I saw it too. And I really enjoyed the rant itself, even though I really like Zane. Still, watching Alan rant is just so much fun.
It is. That's why that video is so great.
But still, I think that can be really interesting to discuss from both a subjective lens and an objective lens, because from a subjective lens, he can like not enjoy how Zane insta loves Vin, and I actually did enjoy it. I don't mind insta love either, by the way. I'm weird like that, but
I don't. As a previous video,
I remember. Yeah, you made a very good point about it. And I would like to explain why it's a very good part of Zane, like from an objective point of view, because Sanderson tried to portray there a character that hears voices. That also a little bit relates to my book, but just a little bit. I would say that somebody who has this kind of a mental disorder is very likely to like be in their own world, be in their own imagination, let a world of conversations happen inside his head, and that can really lead to insta love. Like a person who is like that, who is like Zain, and meets a person, someone like Vin, they are very likely. And I'm sure we can like find objective statements of it online and stuff, or from I don't know, experts. They are very likely to fall in love with Vin based on what happens in their head alone.
I think I agree with that.
And so I feel that the choice to make him insta love her is a very good narrative choice. It's a very good representation of a character like this. Whether or not people like it, that's totally up to them, and that's a separate conversation. But I do think it was a very good part of. Now I'm using the word good. It's very difficult to talk about those stuff. Yeah. I really liked it. That's the subjective part, and I think I find it very realistic. That's the objective part of it, because it like shows how people are in real life.
Yes, because like with a person like Zane, if you're hearing voices, even if one of them is different from the others, eventually what happens is you start having conversations with yourself, and a lot of things happen in your head a lot faster than they happen in real life, and you can convince yourself of things a lot quicker, and it might seem like insta love, even though like Zane might have heard about Vin and met her, and then within seconds, just like the possibilities and the conversations spun out within his head, and he had the conversations like, oh, this is going to happen, and it turned into insta love.
Yes. So I would say it's a proper way to characterize this character. What did I want to say? English is hard. To represent this character, a very proper way to do that. Doesn't have to be liked.
Sure.
So yeah, that's another example. So yeah, I will watch the video of Let's Argue, and I hope it was somewhat made sense. I realize it's not perfect. I find it very useful though. This approach it saves me from a lot of needless fights of like chasing our own tail in discussions and stuff. And just for the sake of I don't know, letting people know. Usually my reviews are subjective. I never find myself controlling the material enough, like knowing the book well enough to express an objective review. So usually my reviews are totally subjective. All right. So anything else you would like to talk about? Like there is also always more stuff to talk about, but we have been on for an hour. So
I think I think some of what you're saying actually ties really well into some of the things that Bookborn was talking about, especially with art, how art is skilled and unskilled. And I would say with skilled and unskilled art, that would be something that over time, that's a consensus that has been developed about what constitutes skill or unskilled with art.
I agree. I remember this part of the video. I would like to say about that skills break into a very big spectrum, very detailed spectrum. So I really like the example of setup and payoff. And again, going back to Mistborn, I think the author really shows skill in setup and payoff there. You can find you see payoffs in the end of the trilogy, and you can find a setup for it in the beginning. And when you try to objectively say what makes the skill of setup and payoff, you can find all of the data in the book. I would. And I really liked how she used skill and unskilled instead of good or bad, or better and worse in that video. And yeah, it ties really well. That's pretty much what I had to say about it. I would say that just like you need to consider a lot of skills when you try to talk about those stuff. And
'cause there's a lot that
also,
goes into stuff.
yeah, and it's also very easy to generalize, like say that because Sander was good in setup and payoff in Mistborn, that means he's generally good in setup and payoff. So you need to be careful of that because, like, even if he was good in setup and payoff there, it may not be true to Elantris or to other books. So yeah, also careful not to generalize. Keep it. It's better to keep an objective discussion on that specific piece of art and data.
Yeah, definitely. It's the more generalization you get, that I feel like the more subjective it starts to be.
Yeah.
I think one example is stereotypes. Stereotypes are formed based on.
It's so difficult to find what they're formed about, right? Because they're so silly.
They're formed on certain events or characterizations happening consistently enough that the people that use the stereotypes come together or encounter each other and sympathize with each other's experiences. And this happens on such a massive scale that it ingratiates itself into a society.
And that totally constitutes some subjective stuff because objectively, when you take a person from the stereotype, you can maybe not find the data that you need to prove that they are like whatever the other people say they are.
Absolutely, because
and that exactly misses
it
the
goes
point.
from, oh, this one particular woman at Starbucks named Karen is picky and always wants to see the manager, to all white women with that particular haircut and a purse dog are going to be picky and want to see the manager all the time.
Yeah, that totally takes for generalization. And then people can generalize on fantasy also, like finding two books with Deus Ex Machina and think that all fantasy uses Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, obviously.
And
all fantasy
stuff
includes
like that.
Wizards and horses and dragons. Obviously.
What else was there about Bookborn's video that was really important to me to discuss? Well, we kind of talked about it already. I don't remember if we like reached the point, but what YouTubers like should be doing. I think I just want to clarify that I think that both discussions should be out there, like both objective stuff and subjective stuff.
I think
both can be interesting.
Especially based on your premises, it's good. It would be good for, I think, both consumers and makers of booktube videos, not to jump haste on when you disagree with somebody, because a lot of the times it might be a definitional issue, like you said with Ray, and there's always a lot of arguments that I've seen a lot of arguments online, honestly, that are the only thing they're saying differently is the definition. Like if they actually delved into what they were actually arguing about, they'd be arguing about the definition, not whether or not a character is a Mary Sue type.
Yes, the definition, and sometimes the source of the definition. Like sometimes people will consider Wikipedia yes or no for the source of definition and stuff.
Wikipedia is decent. It's a good starting spot, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. It links you to so many places, so why not? But I can see someone like not agreeing with it brings me to another discussion, but I don't want to go down. It just like probably better cut this part, but like it brought me to the part of to the discussion of Bergdahl Test. You know that test?
No, is that? I've heard of that test.
So there was this one person, I think it's a woman named Bergdahl, that she said that something about a story. If you want it to be feminist, it should be including two women talking to each other about something that is not other men in at least one scene. and without that, the story is not
that's
feminist.
a really low bar.
Yeah, and she totally doesn't really stay loyal to it. She like keeps telling people, "Stop referring me to this sentence. It's really stupid." And like a story can be feminist and not include women at all. But if you take a specific line from Wikipedia, then you can make her look like she does believe in that. And the law, the test is based on her. It's like named after her, and it's like a thing. She can't do anything about it now. No matter how many times she will say that she doesn't relate to this rule. So it just reminded me like of Wikipedia stuff that sometimes a few lines from it can be really not true to what the person wanted to say.
Yep. Context.
Yeah. Anyway, I would say that Wikipedia is a fine source, like on general. You just need to maintain all the context.
Yes, maintain the context is very important for a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
We're hitting a little above an hour now.
Yeah.
And yeah, so thank you so much for coming on. Do you have any concluding thank yous? Emergency?
Yeah, Ray was a Mary Sue, and Vin was not.
Objectively. You defined everything. So go back and look at that.
Yeah, and you can totally look up a definition or come up with your own, and then see if they match it. And it will be an objective process. The subjective process comes only with your experience, whether or not you experience them as a Mary Sue or frustrating and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Hopefully
we'll do
Thank you for having
more
me.
things, more discussions.
It was a lot of fun. I would love that.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.